discourse is on Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice are, in one respect, kissing cousins. And what do I mean by that? Both Pride and Prejudice cause separation. They do not derive from the universal self, but rather derive from the ego. So, what is pride? There's some aspects of pride that are actually positive. Pride in your job, pride in the task that you've accomplished, um, being proud of your heritage, of your nationality. Um, those things are all on the positive spectrum of pride. The pride that I'm talking about today is different. This is the pride where there's an excessive attachment to your own self importance and your own achievement. This particular kind of pride is very dangerous, and it's talked about in really all of the major religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Muslim, Hindu. It doesn't really matter. There's a passage in the Bible um, which I wanted to read. This is from Proverbs, and this is talking about pride. It's Proverbs chapter 16, and it's verse 18. It says, "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit goes before a fall." This is the passage in the Bible where we get the colloquialism that we're all familiar with. Pride goeth before the fall. It's a paraphrasing of that passage that I just read. So the question therefore presents, why, if you are prideful, if you have this excessive interest in your own self-achievement, why does that cause a fall? So this is a tricky concept to address, and I'll explain why. Um, with pride, with this excessive attachment to self-achievement, um, you really believe that you're the center of the universe. Everything derives from you. All accomplishments are your accomplishments. Any successes that other people have came because you gave them some insight or helped them out. This is the prideful person. Um, this is closely related to what we talk about here at the Spirit of Lotus concerning being a co-creator. As a co-creator, you are the center of the universe. You are the source of creation, the source of your reality on this physical plane. So what is the difference between pride and what we talk about when we're referencing being a co-creator? So the prideful person does not take into account anything else. The prideful person does not recognize that they are one and the same with all creation. That they are unified with everything that is. The co-creator recognizes that the source of their power comes from that they are everything, that they are unified with every person, place, thing, atom, everything. They are one with it. It is through that oneness and through that unity that the co-creator has all possibility at hand. Can you see the difference between that and the prideful person who is literally separating themselves from unity with people, places, and things, and working out of the belief that everything comes literally from them and nothing else? Let me try to clarify this even more. The Bible talks about coming to God as an empty cup, right? A prideful person does not come as that empty cup. Their cup is full and overflowing with opinions, conclusions, judgments. The prideful person doesn't feel that they need to have their cup filled. They've already filled it for themselves. It is the humble person that comes to God as an empty cup, realizing that God, as the source of everything, is able to fill that cup with God's will, God's love, God's truth, God's wisdom. Again, unifying them with all that is. The prideful person wants to control everything. They not only want to control everything, they believe they control everything because they are the source of everything. Their own self-achievement, their own self-grandeur. What this does, however, is it does not allow a prideful person to let go and let God. So the prideful person is always swimming upstream, so to speak. They're always working against the current. Now they believe that they can defeat the current and they can always swim upstream whenever they have to, instead of just letting things be and flowing with the current. Letting things take shape as they're supposed to take shape. Letting cycles occur as they're supposed to occur. There'll always be cycles of good and bad, positive and negative, war and peace. This is just the nature of this physical plane that we live in. And the Buddhists say if you try to control that, all that does is bring suffering in your life. When the Buddhists talk about pride, they call it mana. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's M-A with a line over the first A, N-A, mana. And that's one of the worst things that you can do. The Dalai Lama calls mana poison to the practice. Poison to the practice. The prideful person, this can lead to spiritual elitism. This is this really slippery slope you have between pride and being a co-creator. If the prideful person thinks that their religion is the only way, this leads to the spiritual elitism, and this causes separation. This is part of the poison that the Dalai Lama is talking about when he speaks of mana. So I said at the beginning of this that pride and prejudice are kissing cousins. Prejudice also causes separation. So what is prejudice? Prejudice is a preconceived opinion about someone, a group, a place, a thing, a situation, which is not based on sufficient knowledge or experience. With pride, we have separation because it's all about the ego. With prejudice, we have separation because it's all about ignorance. Prejudice is ignorance. Prejudice is derived from fear. Fear of a person, a place, a thing, a group, because you haven't taken the time or the effort to come to know them, to come to experience them or the situation, to learn about it. It's fear of it. Fear is one of the strongest separators from God. It is a lack of recognition, fear, of how we are all unified, how you are unified with everything. It is this lack of appreciation of this unity, lack of knowledge about this unity, and worse yet with prejudice, it's a lack of taking any time or effort to get to know another person, place, or thing, or situation. I wanted to read another passage, from the Bible. In preparing for this discourse, I was reading some things about you can misinterpret really any religious text or literature. Um, and I didn't have to choose to read from the Bible today. I could have chosen to read from any text, really. But all religions at their heart are about love. You cannot have love if there is pride. You cannot have love if there is prejudice. In this passage from the Bible, this is from 1 Corinthians, which is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. A lot of people know about 1 Corinthians because of chapter 13, which is the passage about how there's hope and faith and love, and the greatest of these is love, and love endures and never fails. It's said at weddings, it's said all the time in church. It's a really well-known passage in 1 Corinthians. But there's another one in the earlier chapter of 1 Corinthians. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and this is verse 13, which is specific to prejudice and how prejudice is not acceptable. It says, "For by one Spirit were we all baptized into one body, irrespective of whether we were Jew or Greek, irrespective of whether we were bonded or free. And we have all been made to drink of one Spirit." I watched a movie last night, which I wanted to share with people because if you watch the movie, it's a documentary, and on its face, it's not about Pride and Prejudice, but there's a lot of lessons in it about Pride and Prejudice. And if you have a chance to see it, I'd really recommend it, particularly if you're interested in music. The title of the movie, and it's on Netflix, the title of the movie is called Searching for Sugar Man. Searching for Sugar Man. So Sugar Man is the title of a song. And this song was written and sung by a gentleman whose name is Sixto Rodriguez. Sixto Rodriguez. Sixto is kind of a play off of, he was the sixth child born of a Mexican immigrant family. They moved from Mexico to Detroit, and he was born in Detroit, and he was the sixth child, and so they called him Sixto. Sixto Rodriguez. This was a laboring family, very poor family, and Detroit, this was when they moved there, this was in the 60s, actually probably in the 50s, and he started singing in the 60s and 70s. Detroit was a really rough place in that era. I happened to live in Detroit in the late 60s, early 70s. Poor, the automobile industry not doing well, a lot of crime, drugs, pretty much anything bad you can think of with an impoverished big city. So, Sixto Rodriguez played guitar and wrote songs, kind of folksy songs, similar to like a Bob Dylan-ish. And one time, he was heard by these really famous record producers from Motown. And they had produced a lot of the big names in Motown. They went and heard Rodriguez at a bar, a dive bar in Detroit. And they were blown away at the talent of this gentleman. And they thought he was going to be the next big star. They essentially thought it was guaranteed. They didn't think there was any way that Rodriguez could fail. So they cut an album with him, and it's called Cold Fact. The album bombed in the United States. Until I saw this movie, I had never heard of Sixto Rodriguez. I had no idea who this guy was. And pretty much that's how everyone is in this country. No one knows about Sixto Rodriguez. So he cuts this album, it bombs in the United States. These music producers, they can't believe it. They don't know what happened. Um, they cut another album, it bombed too. And that was in the United States the end of Rodriguez's musical career. Really to the shock of these big names in Motown. So where are we going with this story? So what happens is a bootleg copy of Rodriguez's first album, Cold Facts, somehow got from the United States to South Africa. And this was in the early 1970s. This was the height of apartheid in South Africa. And God works in mysterious ways. Sixto Rodriguez became one of the biggest music influences ever in South Africa. Ever. The people in the movie say more than Elvis, more than the Beatles, more than the Rolling Stones, sold more records than them in South Africa. The problem was Rodriguez didn't know about any of this. He was in the United States. He had absolutely no idea this influence and this impact he had on a country around the world. And this is not entirely clear, but he got no money from any of the sales of the albums in South Africa, like none. So Rodriguez in America doesn't know about what's going on in South Africa. He is a laborer in construction, working long hours every day and living basically on the fringes of poverty. A lot of people who knew him actually thought he was homeless, just going from one homeless site to another homeless site. Meanwhile, in South Africa, everybody in South Africa thought he was dead. There was some rumors had been passed around in South Africa that Rodriguez committed suicide during one of his concerts in America. Not true, but for some reason they all thought that. And there was this group of people that they wanted to find out more about Rodriguez because the albums that they had in South Africa, they gave no details about Rodriguez, none. No biographical information at all. So, cutting the story short, they were searching for him to figure out exactly how he buried, where he was buried, how he committed suicide, when he committed suicide, and they undertook this lengthy search to find Rodriguez. They had blogs, they put stuff on the internet. They finally found him in 1998. So like 28 years or so after this album, Cold Fact, made it to South Africa and was such a huge influence. Everybody knew the album in South Africa, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but it helped change perception about apartheid, this album. The Afrikaners, white people there who were musicians, this album was highly influential for them. There's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's some anti-establishment songs in the album, and they took that to heart and they realized they could question the establishment in South Africa, question apartheid, and they started doing that in their music and in their albums. So cutting to 1998, they're trying to find Rodriguez. They actually do find him, and to their shock, he's not dead. Rodriguez is alive. Again, working as a laborer on the fringes of poverty in Detroit. He had never left Detroit. They contact him. They bring him out to South Africa in 1998. And Rodriguez, he can't really believe this. He's like, my music career was a disaster in the United States. I don't know if this is a joke or what's going on, but I'll go to South Africa. They're paying for the trip. And he was greeted essentially like a hero when he got to South Africa. He played 4 concerts in 1998 to sold out crowds of like 20, 30,000 people. This is how big he was. How does this all tie into Pride and Prejudice? When Rodriguez found out how influential and popular he was in South Africa, this did not change him at all. He was not prideful at all. A prideful person would have been so bitter had they found out that for all these years they were so huge in a country, should have been making so much money, wasn't getting any of the royalties, and as a result had to work as a hard laborer in Detroit. Rodriguez was not bitter at all. His mindset was simply to go with the flow. This was an amazing thing that had happened in South Africa. He was happy that it had happened, but it wasn't going to change his life at all, and he wasn't upset or sorry about anything that had occurred to him, particularly back in Detroit. And even with these concerts, by the way, in South Africa, these sold out concerts, he really didn't make any money. And he didn't stay there. He went back to Detroit, went back to working as a laborer, and went back to essentially living on the fringes of poverty. There was one co-worker they interviewed in the movie, and this is where it ties into Prejudice. So again, they all thought he was basically a homeless guy, picking up work in the construction here and there, and just trying to get by day. No talent, couldn't do anything, from an immigrant family, was never going to amount to anything. And when Rodriguez came back and was telling them, hey, this is prejudice. This is a preconceived opinion about somebody not based on sufficient knowledge, right? So when Rodriguez comes back, he's like, hey, I'm really famous in South Africa. I'm a big deal. And they're like, come on. You're not a big deal. You're a Mexican laborer working in Detroit. Give me a break. But he had pictures and stuff. And he showed them. And, that's when the light bulb went on for them. They interviewed one of Rodriguez's daughters, and she said something which I feel is really impactful. Just because somebody is monetarily poor, just because in outward appearance they don't look like anything special, does not mean they're not full of love, full of talent, full of gifts, and haven't contributed immensely to change in this world. For people in the United States, in Detroit, if they looked at Rodriguez, again, they wouldn't think he was anything. For people in South Africa, he's a hero. He moved mountains. He made change, positive change, an unbelievable influence in that country. So, with Prejudice, watch appearances. Tara talks about this all the time at church services. Appearances are deceiving. And no matter what you've accomplished, as Rodriguez showed, if you've done it out of love, he did his music out of love. That was the only point he did it. So he could accept that even though he was famous in South Africa and had sold all these albums and had helped in his own way to take down apartheid, for him it really didn't change anything. He had done it out of love. He was glad it happened, but he was continued playing his guitar out of love, and really that was the only reason he did it. So, really a beautiful story in that movie. Um, Searching for Sugar Man. So, again, if you have the opportunity, I'd really recommend that you watch it. That's what I wanted to talk about today with Pride and Prejudice, and we have some time for a deep level meditation. Thank you.